Behind all of this, though, Frankie, is fear. It's fear of silence. It's a fear of rejection. It's a fear of pestering. There's fear behind all of these reasons why people start negotiating with ghosts.
You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Matthews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
It's 30 minutes away. I'll be there in 10.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Frankie!
Ian, you son of a bitch.
Frankie, I wasn't sure if you were going to show up today, so I thought I was going to be co-hosting this podcast with a ghost, but it's nice to see that you graced us with your presence.
Yes, there's two versions of Frank, tardy or unprepared. So I opted for prepared.
There's three, because sometimes you show up tardy and unprepared. So let's not leave that off the table. That's not an either or proposition with you. I am excited that you chose one of the three today. That's good.
Yes. The best path possible.
You're very intentional, very intentional.
There is no doubt.
I did drop like 4 outlines on Frank last night. Frank's going away. He's going to go live in Europe for a month. These are the kind of things you can do when you're a real estate mogul. So we are trying to cram a few extra episodes of recording in a very short window.
We also have 50 ADUs under construction. I'm on the phone with a bunch. Speaking of ghosts, you know who's currently a ghost? Dominion Power. I can't get those assholes to show up for anything. I've been on with council people and like nonprofits, like trying to get some power. I got like 25 units finished.
I'm just curious. It's off topic, but Dominion, it is the data center situation what's driving their problems?
Nobody will tell me the answer, but it has to. Like, I read the news. It has to be. They're like, I think it's more profitable for the state. It's got to be a focal point. I mean, business owners versus homeowners. Like, they told us, we had a $2 million house we sold and we built a detached garage. And it took us, they told us it would take 6 weeks to hook up the power. Worst case scenario, it took like 14, like 2.5 months to get power to like a little garage. And there's already power at the house. It was like a 12-minute job.
Good times.
That's it, man. But I'm excited because we've got both our models are ready. So no ghost there. All right, let's get to it.
Right now, we're in a rough market in certain segments. Specifically in real estate, it's a tough market. It's a tough market in financing. Mortgage market is down. Realtors are struggling. New home construction sales are about as crappy as they've been since 2008 or 9. And what I see, Frank, hasn't really changed in 30 years. In a down market, sales folks can lose their confidence so fast. And they start making assumptions. And what we're going to talk about today is kind of these phantom negotiations you have in your head when there's silence or you start making assumptions. And I'm going to start, when I started in sales, I sold projects, I sold large equipment working for GE, business to business. And when I started, I didn't know about our hourly rate. I didn't know, you tell a kid out of college, Frankie, someone asks you like, what do you charge for an hour of an engineer's time? If I'd have said to you $300 or $3,000, you wouldn't have had any idea if any of that made sense or what mattered, because you're selling to big companies. So our rate was $1,800. And that's what I knew, that our rate was $1,800, and it was time and a half if you wanted them on a weekend or after 5 o'clock. And I was kind of taught some of that, but you don't really know what that means until you quote it to a customer. You quote the actual rate to a customer. And as a new sales rep, the first people I was calling on weren't exactly the colossus of the industry. I was calling on little shithole paper mills and stamping, dead end stamping where M&M worked in 8 Mile. I was calling on people that would take a meeting with me. because the big guys wouldn't. I was cold calling. So I would go meet with little industrial plants, and they might have a problem. They might have a problem in their electrical system or in their automation. They would say, okay, well, that sounds good. Your engineer could help us fix that. What's your hourly rate? And I would say it's $1,800 an hour. And when you're calling on small guys, quoting a GE rate, it's kind of like quoting a Toll Brothers price to someone that should really be buying a Frank Cava ADU. It's, it's very, the eyes pop out.
They're not for sale.
They're not for sale. So, my first several months in sales, as I was making my bones and figuring out how to learn how to sell, I would just get my ass beat up for saying $1,800. What? That is highway robbery. Did you know that Crown Electric charges us $500 an hour? How can you be triple? Are you 3 times as good? And I would just get beaten up, and not only just beaten up, not get the business either. And I would stutter, and I would come back to the office, and I would ask the guys in the office, how do you handle that? How do you handle that when someone beats you up on the hourly rate? What do you say? What do you do? And they would give me some tips and tactics and say, okay, well, the average tenure of our engineers is 20 years. We're GE. We work on some of the big projects in the world. I had some things to say. And so I got used to being on the defensive. And then I started graduating to calling on bigger companies, Frankie. So I would call on U.S. Steels. I would call on ComEd, huge multi-state businesses, billion-dollar companies, Mars Candy. I'm calling on, big firms. And
do you have any contacts at Mars Candy anymore? I'd like a hookup.
I did like going there. It smelled great.
Oh, yeah.
And they would ask me my hourly rate. And I would give them the hourly rate, and then I would immediately start making excuses for it, even at the big companies. And I didn't even know I was doing this, Frankie. I was just conditioned. I was conditioned this way to make assumptions because so many people had argued with me on our hourly rate. And I remember I went on a call with our engineering manager, and I went into my pitch on hourly rate. And after the meeting, he kind of lit me up. He was like, what the hell are you apologizing for? We got the best engineering team on the planet. This is ComEd. Do you know how many millions of dollars they lose for an outage for 20 minutes? Do you know how many people die in the summer if they can't get power to the city of Chicago? Do you have any idea how small $1,800 is? And you're apologizing. And I was like, oh man, I am. He goes, no one at ComEd is going to crush you on that hourly rate. Just explain the value, explain the return. They know what they're getting from $500 an hour. No one's going to lose their job at ComEd for spending $1,800 an hour with GE. They will lose their job for spending $500 an hour at Crown Engineering when the lights go out during the 4th of July celebration, right? And so it was a really good eye opener for me, because I stopped and I thought, you're right. That guy didn't ask me to explain my rate. He just asked what it was. He just needed to know what to put on the purchase order to tell his purchasing team. And here I was talking myself out of the order by apologizing and explaining. And so when we talk about negotiating with ghosts, that's what I mean. There was no one on the other side of that saying, how dare you explain yourself. What is that rate? It was in my head. It was the ghost of a former shitty little company that didn't have money, that had negotiated hard with me, that I had become conditioned to negotiate things that were not being asked of me.
We wear caps and sleeves at this level, son.
This isn't the California Penal League.
Vaughn. So your GE story made me think of something. So managerial tip. When you get someone new in the door, it's critical that you don't give them your best shit to start with, because they don't know what they don't know. So in every industry, in every business, in every opportunity, the new people usually start on the things that have the lower consequence, because we all know they're going to make mistakes, and there's only so many mistakes you can withhold or withstand to hit quota or hit numbers or those types of things to drive a revenue business. So you have to put people on lower leads. But this is something that I find people miss a lot. And it's pretty nuanced. So Dave Chappelle said something in one of his last comedy specials that I loved. He goes, "The thing I hate about poor people is they can't see past their own pain." And it's Dave Chappelle, and he delivers it with an incredible amount of Dave Chappelle. And he gets away with it because he's Dave Chappelle. But what Dave Chappelle is saying is this: poor people in this instance, in this joke, can't relate to what's going on because they're poor. They can't see past the end of their own nose. It's hard for people to project themselves to a place where they're not. All of us struggle with that. It's not just the people in the joke. So the reason I bring this up is, as a manager, you need to understand the biases with the people that you're managing. And you need to understand what it is that are coming in with preconceived notions. A really skilled manager would talk to Ian and say, "Where do you live?" Ian lives in a shitty apartment in Chicago at the moment. He's mostly there to hang out with his friends and to work at the week. He's talked about it, go party on the weekends. He wants to work hard, but he's a poor kid, like just out of college. Like he doesn't understand $1,800 an hour. That's like caviar at every meal. Or like, birthdays was the worst days. Now we drink champagne when we thirsty. Like it's like one of those, right? So like he can't relate. When I was selling houses at Ryan Homes and I was managing, we had a neighborhood that was like in Culpeper, and Culpeper was a third of the price of these other markets. And people were driving from $1 million houses to sell $300,000 houses. And they were completely blowing past what was important to the people in their models, because they're like, it's just 300 grand. But to the people shopping, that was a lot of money. So if you can't relate, if you don't know where you are and you don't have good footing for what it is that you're selling or doing, it's really, really hard for you to relate, and you can make a lot of gaffes and mistakes. And then you show up with preconceived notions until you get it. So what I hear in that, and when you're dealing with ghosts, it's the reason we have a frequent meeting every day in sales. We talk about this. I'll let you go through the next point, and I'll give a story from this morning. But that's why we literally deal with things day over day over day, so ghosts don't build up. You don't get into ghost stories. There might be a sighting. You deal with it quickly.
I want to hear about your sales meeting.
All right.
Dive into it.
So I'm going to ask you a serious question. Are we still at war with Iraq or Iran? Excuse me, not Iraq.
Iraq? We haven't been at war with Iraq in years.
Let me ask the question again.
Dead,
are we still at war with Iran?
Ish.
Exactly. Like you and I both have every feed on our phone. You have CNBC on in your office. I don't know either, right?
Ish. Yeah.
Right. So this morning I asked that question because people are like, the market seems uncertain. Like, no shit. Like I'm fairly educated. I have the Wall Street Journal pulsing to my watch, and I can't tell you if we're at war or not. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. And what came up was, hey, I think our buyers are taking the summer off. Everybody's freaked out. There's a lot of uncertainty. So because of the fact that we meet daily, we talked about it today. So I pulled it up, Ian. June of last year versus the first 24 days of June of this year. Richmond MSA. What would you guess are the sales, like real estate sales in our market a year ago for the full month versus this month of June for the first 23 days?
I bet they would be pretty comparable because last year wasn't great either.
So here's what it actually is. This year is up about 10%, about $10. So about 2 to 3% in price. It's up a little bit in days on market, about just a smidge, but the volume is up 40% from a year ago. And that's in a smaller sample size. That's the first 23 days of the month versus the full entire month of June. So if you look at it, we're like 50% better than we were a year ago. So when I attack a problem, I have been at this a long time, and I use my hooker story, but it's not going to work with your clients in the South, so I'll skip it. But the reason I say that is I hear that and I don't get scared or turned away. What I do is I say, hold on a minute, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. I want to make sure Ian is going in knowing that his contractor can afford $1,800 an hour. Like that's not a big deal for them. So I was talking about it, and then we started to use the data, and we looked at the data, and then we said, okay, how do we do it this way? And then what we did this morning, Ian, is this. Like, do you know the difference between a cash offer and a novation offer?
Tell me. I think I do, but why don't you explain it?
One is basically a little bit higher price and it's a little fast. One's a little bit slower and a higher price, and one's a little bit faster with a lower price. So the sales rep I was talking to, we were saying, hey, why don't you just pitch a price and then have parameters around it and work into it? So like what's important? Don't say it's option A or option B. Just talk. And as you're presenting the offer, kind of lay it out in different ways of like, hey, I could go a little bit faster to lower number. I can go a little bit higher in my price, but I need a little bit more time to do it. I might need a little bit more access to your property. So that's the way that you can kind of overcome something, because I heard it immediately. And I basically did the opposite of what Ian's manager did. He walked him in and said, do you understand how little 1,800 is? Like I said, look, what's important to these folks? Come in open-minded. Don't give them a definitive one way or the other. Be a little bit vaguer and actually probe and ask questions to understand what it is that they really, really want, and then get them to move in mentally to where they're going next. And let's get to that solution. That's the big thing. For you, $1,800 an hour means so much less than not having a power outage. And if you had been given, Ian, under no circumstance can they have a power outage, you're never going to negotiate on price. You're going to negotiate on something completely different. You're going to come in with a different level of confidence because you were set up for that.
Yeah. And I was going into some of these utilities, Frank, before they would even ask, saying, but if I talk to my manager, I could get that down to 20% if we had volume. And what was I doing? I was just giving away money that, and all it really was doing, if you think about it psychologically, it was downgrading the value of what I had to offer. These guys wanted the best of the best who were confident enough to, like when you go in and you buy a Rolex, you don't want the sales guy to be like, hey, listen, I could probably give you I would start, like, you start discounting too much without me asking. I'm thinking it's fake.
Right.
Your Rolex, like, yeah, charge me the top of the, that's why I'm buying a Rolex. I want people to know I spent serious money on this thing for quality.
We're going to get to a clip from Boiler Room in a minute, but act as if, right? You act as if you're going to get into that whole thing when you start to talk about it. So the one thing that we've had this conversation before. Ian coaches people in his business leadership programs. I manage people. I've been doing it for decades. One of the things that I always kind of tell new people is you're not negotiating on price. Don't even get involved with price. You have absolutely no credibility or ability or like permission to talk about price. What you can negotiate on is, like on a lead gen side for me, you can negotiate on what day of the week, what time, how long will the appointment be, what kind of value will you get, is it worth your time? Those kind of things you can negotiate on, but price of the unit is, you're not qualified for that. And we'll give you that when you earn it, but it takes a little bit of time. Now, I screwed this up initially 5 years ago to let anybody negotiate on price, but I realized like you got to earn that right. Like right now, it's you're playing a completely different sport than you're accustomed to. So we got to start you small and have you work on things that you are an expert in, and then we can move you into price. But right now what you're doing is selling the value of the person who you're going to meet. That's step one. Then we can get into a little bit deeper conversation, have a needs-based conversation, and then pivot it to, is it the right number?
There's psychology behind all of this, Frankie, and it starts with self-confidence. When your self-confidence is down in sales,
Yep.
it brings out some of the trappings of psychological bias. And there's three that I want to talk about. And I'm going to be interested to ask you, because you've studied, Frank has two different sales teams. He has a lead team, which their job is to set appointments for the acquisitions team. And then he has his closers, the acquisition team, which their job is to negotiate a good price to buy from the actual buyer.
I want to go deeper though on that, because if you really think about it, Ian, I got more than that. I got Ray Sean in there negotiating with people on how to take care of a property. Like just on the sales side.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But everything in my business comes back to sales because I'm a salesman. Like everything in a carpenter's house comes back to carpentry. So we look at all of those things through the metrics of sales. But go ahead.
I didn't mean to downgrade each of the departments. No, you've got a group that's negotiating rent increases. That's tenant management. You have a group yes, you have a lot of interaction with customers. So the first one I want to talk about is the projection fallacy. The projection fallacy is we project our own personal budget constraints. Frank was just talking about this, or our past failures onto a prospect. If the last client balked at price, you assume this one will too. If the last 3 people who said no to you said, why do I have to pay for a lot premium just because it backs up to water? You immediately start discounting the lot premium on the 4th person, even though they might not have asked you for it. I think there's also in the projection fallacy, you bring up a good point. Sometimes you have young kids that are selling $2 million houses. They can't relate. They start thinking, wow, that's going to be a lot of money, or they can't relate with someone who could buy a $2 million house cash.
Imposter syndrome can very easily lead to the projection fallacy because you don't know what you're projecting because you don't think you belong there in the first place. You can't move yourself in mentally. So it happened in that $300,000 example I was given earlier. Like I would never move into this house. You would dismiss everything. So it can happen. You have to just be empathetic to where you are and understand that from both sides.
Yeah. One person complained about price becomes everyone's complaining about price. This is the projection fallacy when on a limited amount of information, you project out something that may or may not be a trend or may not be the truth with every single person you talk to. But the truth is in sales, not everyone's your buyer. Not everyone's your buyer. But if your buyer is in front of you, don't assume the non-buyer's needs are the same as the buyer who's sitting in front of you. A big part of what we do in sales is figuring out who's not buying from us today and ending that call as quickly as possible so we can get in front of the buyer. Not everyone who walks into a model home is a buyer. Not everyone who responds to one of Frank's TV ads or postcards and calls in is an actual buyer. There's plenty of people that call in that are never going to buy, that may be just fishing along for info. The sooner Frank's lead team can figure that out and get off the phone with them and get onto a more productive lead, the better they are. But you don't want to bring that garbage into the actual buyers who are calling in, because you are going to end up diminishing the value that you provide to the actual buyers.
So you coach baseball, you've been doing it for like a decade, right? If a kid goes in a slump, he doesn't hit the ball, he's 0 for 2 in the game or something along those lines. What do you do like during the game?
Nothing but pat him on the head and say hell of an at bat during the game.
And if you have the ability to, you might just walk them over to a tee. Like in the majors, right? They have the ability to go to a tee, or they can go into the batting cage, which is underneath the stadium, and they just hit a couple of meatballs. And the reason for that is you just want to break your slump. You want to just remember, I got a good swing. You got to get your head right. That's what happens a lot of times in these instances. You have to have a bathtub type of a mind where that occurrence was an occurrence, and it doesn't mean it's the market. Now, you can't be blind to the fact that you get that feedback 100 times or 10 or 8, then it's real. But if it's 1, you got to get 1 or 2. Okay, I got to move past it. The second thing you talked about, we've talked about it here, and I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday. The guy that works with us, his wife is a new sales rep working with a real estate company. And she's talking about how hard it is to figure out who to talk to. And I remember, I think most of our listeners come from your world, so it's model homes, right? What I used to try and figure out my first week or 2 in a new neighborhood is what was the most important questions that I could ask about the people who walk through the door. Because invariably, you get no traffic, no one's walking through your model until you heat up your lunch. And then when you heat up your lunch, 7 people show up and you got to pick A, your lunch is getting cold, which pisses you off because you're hungry. And then B, you got to figure out which one of these 7 people do I spend my time with. Now, I'm going to come back to the questions in a second. The other thing you need to understand is, what does my success rate need to be in order for me to have success? So we've talked about this here. We have a 35 to 40% conversion rate on our appointments to close, which is insanely high. But I know how many appointments I need to go on every month in order to get there. when I was in a model home, I would need, my normal quota was somewhere between 2 and 3. So if that was my normal quota, I knew that if I had 100 traffic units, I only had to find 3 to 5 people a month who would buy. That's it, 3 to 5 out of 100. That's pretty small. So you just got to make sure you find the right people and spend your time with those right people. And that becomes pretty easy to do. But then in the questions, so do you teach people like how to ask the right questions in a model, or do you go over that with managers from time to time? So like,
Yep.
I have a formula for it, but how do you do it?
Let's hear your formula. You've intrigued me.
So what I look at first is who's my ideal buyer. So if I'm in a new neighborhood, first time home buyer, cool. Most likely it's going to be renters. I understand the price point. I understand where if you buy my cheapest model to my most expensive model, what's my monthly payment going to be? What do my down payments need to be? And then I'll do a Google search. What are the 15 to 20 biggest employers around here that pay a salary in this range? If I go to a first time move up neighborhood, same exact thing. I know what the numbers are. And then I kind of understand like, okay, can this be a renter or does it need to be someone who owns? And then I was working in Fairfax 20 years ago and the price point was in the 750s, which back then was a multi-million-dollar home today. So if you rented, there was absolutely no way you could afford this, with the exception of if you just got relocated here. So I'd ask those questions. Oh, where do you live now? Oh, I live at the apartment building. Oh, cool. What brought you there? I just got shipped in from so-and-so. I sold my house in New Mexico. Okay, you're a prospect. I've lived there for 20 years. You aren't. So very quickly, you can still be kind to people, but that's not a true buyer. Let me have my assistant kind of answer those questions, and I funnel my way through the crowd. But in 2 or 3 questions, you can understand pretty quickly: are you qualified to be there, or are you not? And that's how you nimbly move your way through a crowded sales floor.
What Frank's doing there and what he's teaching is important in sales. He's trying to get to what's today's status quo. Before I'm going to sell you anything, I need to understand, where do you live? What do you like about where you live? Why do you live there? And what are you sniffing around here for? So help me understand what your current situation is as quick as possible. And what are you looking to make better on that situation? Those are good qualifying questions, because if I don't know that, why would I bother talking about features of this house, features of this community, features of the way we can build this house? I'm wasting time if I don't know what the current situation is and what is the realistic chances that customer wants to change.
In most sales situations, there's a mathematical equation. Can it be afforded? Am I willing to part with this much money? Right? So unfortunately, it's part of the process. It's really hard to quickly sort through things using emotions or specs or desires, but it comes down to the financial part. So if it's the financial part works, awesome. Let's see if our product works. But if our product doesn't work and you're financially qualified, that was a good conversation, but our product's the wrong thing for you. I have 2 kids in wheelchairs. All right, this house has 3 levels. We're probably the wrong fit for you. But now I know kind of where you are. Could I help you find something where there's a neighborhood that fits you and you can still be of value, but you have to pivot? But I don't have that product. Like, you can pretty quickly work your way through it. But what we do because we do cold calls, we do inbounds. First thing we have to find out, we do what's called champ qualifying. Like, first, do they have some level of motivation to sell? Do you own a property? Do you have a motivation to sell? 1 and 2. If I can get those 2, then I have to find out, are you on the title? So like are you someone who actually has control of this asset? So those are just really quick things that you can find out in the first 60 seconds, and you can understand, does this make sense? So in every business you work in, understand what it is you're selling, what your value proposition is. In addition to that, what does the buyer need to look like? Think about this, Ian. You gone into those smaller customers with $1,800 an hour versus the larger customers. If you had a better understanding of what it is, what does an outage cost? It's a completely different conversation.
I think there's a real parallel there too of the example you gave of the rep who's selling $1 million home versus $300,000 home. I didn't yet have the context to know that I was dealing with a different customer. Yep. I saw one engineering manager with a hard helmet and another engineering manager with a hard helmet. Both sort of looked the same. Both were drinking coffee and smoking a cigarette in a office in a factory and I put them together. I didn't treat them as different prospects because I didn't understand how to qualify. I didn't know going in there the difference in those two different departments and what they were going through. I also like that you brought up baseball. I'll give you an example on this, Frankie, and it's not just about striking out, but I think this is example that will resonate with you also with your team. In baseball, hitting is a real mind fuck. It's like it is a very mental situation. The hitter has to adjust. The pitcher knows what's coming. That's what makes hitting so hard. And good pitchers can make the ball move. They can throw it slower. They can throw it faster. And I find that when hitters really get into a bad spot, they start guessing and and I'm going to give you a good example of this just from last weekend. So my son played in a showcase tournament. His first at bat, first fastball they gave him, they sent him a meatball down the middle, try to get me over first fastball. My son's the number 3 hitter. He's a good hitter. So he sent that get me over fastball over the center fielder's head, bounced it off the wall, blasted it, right? It was awesome. Hit a triple first at bat of the game. Next at bat, do you think they gave him a get me over fastball? What do you think?
Through his head.
No, they threw him 3 straight curveballs.
Yeah.
So curveball first. IJ's obviously swinging for the fences, looks like an idiot, swings way over the top of it. Second one, they throw him another curveball. He wasn't expecting a second. He thought he'd get a fastball there. He took it. And then the third one, he rolled over a weak ground ball. 3 curveballs, that's all they gave him. Okay. Last at bat, comes up to the plate. First pitch, fastball right down the middle. Did IJ swing?
Nope.
Nope. Took his favorite pitch, the one that he had put over the center fielder's head, and just took it right down the middle. And I asked him after the game, I'm like, were you guessing curve in the third at bat? He goes, yep. And then the rest of his at bat was off. And here's the point I want to try to make. In baseball, you have to always assume fastball. You assume fastball and adjust to the curveball because the curveball's slower and you can adjust to it when there's a curve thrown in there. But if you think curveball and it's a fastball, it's too late. You're never
dead.
hit it. It's by you. And in the MLB, it's even crazy. They throw 100. All those guys have to think fastball, adjust to the curve. So we talked about it, IJ, no matter what you do in the last at bat, always assume you're getting a fastball. And then if you see the spin, adjust, but always assume fastball. How does that apply to sales? You have to assume every person who walks in a model, every person who Frank's team gets on the phone with is a buyer. They are not there to throw you curveballs. They're there to buy. You go in with the assumption.
I like that analogy.
I'm going to sell something. It's a fastball. I'm going to sell something. Get your mind on this customer came here to buy, not to mess with me on all the nickel and dime bullshit the last asshole gave me. This customer is here to buy. Assume a fastball just like you assume the sale. Frankie, the other 2 psychological biases that you have to get over. So that's projection fallacy, and you have to get out of that. So my son was projecting the last at bat onto that at bat. Big mistake. The other 2 are we have a deep need to please. It's subconscious. It's within us. Frank really has this. Frank has to work on this because he grew up with a teacher mom, and she's a big pleaser. And that's you've talked about this before on these episodes. We have a deep need to avoid conflict and to please. And a salesperson that's not aware of this will trade away margin as early as possible because they want to make a friend. They want to buy an illusion of safety and rapport. But in doing that too early, what you're doing is you're sending a signal that you are not valuable. You are saying I'm a commodity. And if you do it too aggressively, too early, I'm starting to question the quality of your product, the effectiveness of your product, the efficacy of your product. I'm starting to worry about those kind of things. If I get on the call with a brand new customer I've never talked to, and I'm discounting before I've even told them what I do with my training programs, what kind of value proposition is that? If I'm not confident in, I'm going to give you all the value of this, and it's actually a great deal, it starts to erode the value in the customer's eyes when you try to please too early before they've even asked.
In my line of work now, the need to please is to pay more for a property than it's really worth. So it's the opposite of new home sales, right? But I think the reason that this is relevant is it still comes from the same place. You don't want to deliver the bad news. The house isn't worth 300, it's worth 220. And what we talk about is, hey, I can offer you 300, but I'm going to be back here in 90 days and I'm going to be telling you it's too expensive. Or we can come to the conversation now about getting the number done. And it's up to you. Do you want to go with the higher number and wait? Or do you want to go with the lower number and move quicker? And there could be a landing spot in the middle. But like being able to not get shook when someone confronts you and be able to just actually still be firm when something is going on. I'll tell you a quick story. So we had a customer show up at our office last week and it didn't go great. This poor guy is getting hosed. Like they bought a house from someone who owned it and they bought it at lease to own, but they didn't have a contract and they put tens of thousands of dollars into this property and they put a huge down payment. And we were buying the house from the seller and the seller goes, F those people. I'm not going to do anything with them. So we got wind of the fact that this was not a great situation. And we did the right thing by the seller. And we told by the resident, and we told them, we'll cut you in on the deal. We'll get you some money. And we negotiated with them. And they had to go through, because of the fact that it was kind of a perilous situation. We didn't really owe them anything. They weren't really on title. They were kind of just in the middle. We had to set some pretty strict parameters for them, or we couldn't have done this deal. And it was all above board. It was written by an attorney, like everything. But what it said was on or about. And on or about was like, I don't remember the exact day, but we'll just say it was on or about Wednesday. And they moved out on Monday. And you would imagine for people who are in a lease to own situation and who got screwed out of a bunch of money, they didn't have a lot of cash. So like they came to the office and they were being really, really aggressive with me. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I wanted to please, but I also didn't want to get trampled on. So I just restated the contract and we talked about the terms of the contract. And I was in my 20s, I would have melted. But as someone who's older, I had all the confidence that we did it right. I had the ability to slow the thing down. We could talk about it. He's like, I want you to write me a check right now. And I'm like, that ain't happening. And then, but I explained why. But I still wanted to please, but at the same time, I can't make a bad decision. And I have to do things in an order because of how complicated it is. So sometimes you just have to have the confidence to be able to back down and be firm. Being firm isn't being a jerk, but it's not being a pleaser.
I think I love that story. I think the last thing I'll leave on the need to please is the best way to please a customer is to provide tremendous value.
100%.
If you don't believe in yourself, your product, your service, you're not going to give them value no matter what price. You could give it away for free and still disappoint them. Think in terms of value, which has nothing to do with price. Give them value and you will please them. If that's important to you, if pleasing people, which it is for most people, then give them value. The last thing I'm going to share on this, Frank and I are big fans of the Godfather movies and the book. In Godfather 2, there's an amazing scene here. And I don't know if I told Frankie about that I was going to bring this up, but in Godfather 2, when the Don is becoming the Don, he is visited by a little old lady who is getting thrown out of her apartment by this scumbag landlord. And the Don, being the Don, doesn't react with violence. He tries to reason with the guy. And he says, hey, she's an older lady. Can you take care of her? And the guy doesn't know he's the Don yet, this landlord. And he pretty much curses him out. Who the hell are you? Get the hell out of my face. Says some things very regrettable. And the Don just says, hey, ask around about me. You might change your mind. And he leaves it at that, goes back to his office. And then there's a scene where the landlord shows up, hat in hand. Oh, Don, I'm so sorry. I didn't know who you were. And this whole scene is amazing because if you watch the scene, and I would play it right now, but it's all in Italian with subtitles, so it wouldn't play great on a podcast. But the Signor Roberto, who is the landlord, he's like, absolutely, she can stay, and she can have the dog, and I'm not going to raise the rent, and the Don's just like got a smirk on his face and just staring, just nodding, smirking, doesn't say a word like for 2 minutes. And every time he pauses and the landlord's so uncomfortable with quiet, he's like, no, but I'm going to drop her price. I'm going to drop it by 20%. And the Don just nods again, smiles, and he keeps talking. And then he's like, no, I cut it in half. And I move her to a nicer apartment. And he just keeps, the longer the Don stares at him, the guy cannot handle the quiet. He just keeps giving more. That's the loss aversion trap. And in sales, on the other side of it, classically, salespeople are taught to use silence as a way to influence, to persuade. The more they're talking, a salesperson's talking, the more quiet the customer is, the more nervous the salesperson gets, just like that landlord. And if you can be quiet, you can flip this psychology onto the customer. And there is a scene that we are going to play for you that is in English that's also from one of Frank and my favorite movies. So this scene we're about to play is from a movie called Boiler Room. Boiler Room was, I don't know, when was this? Late 90s, Frankie, 99, 2000, something like that. And they're pretty much a boiler house. They just pump and dump stocks, right? So they're not selling the nicest thing, but it's an example of how you can use silence. So when you listen to this scene, which is played by Vin Diesel, who is getting on the phone with the doctor after a cold call, who is interested in buying a stock, and they're trying to make it seem like the stock is going crazy. But what I want you to listen to when you hear this, I want you to listen to the effective use of silence, and he does it a couple of times, and how the doctor responds.
All right. Okay, so his name's Dr. Jacobs, and I'd say from the sound of it, he's definitely...
Well, I don't want to hear it, kid.
Okay.
Hi, Dr. Jacobs. This is Chris Marlin over at JT Marlin.
Marlin?
Right, he's my father. So my associate tells me you're interested in one of our stocks.
I will call her back. Yes, MSC sounds like it might be interesting.
Might be. Might be doesn't sell stock at the rate MSC's going for, Dr. Jacobs. We're talking very high volume here.
Well, I still have to run it by my people.
That's great, Doc, if you want to miss yet another opportunity here and watch your colleagues get rich doing clinical trials, then don't buy a share and hang up the phone.
Well, hold on a second now. I didn't say that. I just want to talk about it some more.
Honestly, Doc, I don't have the time. This stock is blowing up right now. The whole firm's going nuts. Hold on, let me open up the door to my office. See that, Doc? That's my trading floor. Now I have a million calls to make to a million other doctors who are already in the know. I can't walk you through this right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, let's do this.
Now, since you're a new account, I cannot go any higher than 2,000 shares. I'm sorry.
2,000? Are you nuts? That is way beyond what I was thinking. 2,000? Jesus. Listen, I'm curious. Why can't you sell me any more than that?
Well, we like to establish a relationship with our clients on something small before we get to the more serious trades. Let me show you several percentage points on this small trade, and then we'll talk about doing future business.
That sounds good. Give me the 2,000 shares.
Done.
You sure you can't do any better on this one?
I'm sorry, Dr. Jacobs. I can. I'm sorry.
Oh, all right. We'll start with this trade then.
Great. I promise we'll swing for the fences on the next one. Do you want that confirmation sent to your office or your mansion?
Very funny, Mr. Marlin.
So incredible. And if you're watching on YouTube, just to show how he uses silence, he actually takes the phone and pulls it away from his head. So it's almost like a reminder to himself that I'm not talking here. And the longer I wait, the better the chance. That is loss aversion and in a really aggressive, kind of sleazy way, and I'm showing it in an obnoxious way from the scene. But that's loss aversion. That is, I don't have the time. I have so much going on. That's confidence. That's, I can pause, and I've now got the doctor thinking that if I let this phone hang up, I'm going to miss something good, which is loss. The fear of loss is twice as powerful as the greed of gain. And so that is what, in that scene, what Vin Diesel is using is making it seem like he is in demand, highly in demand. That's why he had all the guys on the floor scream and act like things are going crazy here. That is loss aversion at its best.
There's another way that's summarized, and it's called the takeaway. And the takeaway is when you do something and you just step back with it, right? Oh, okay, this isn't for you, that kind of thing. At the end, the scene plays out and they explain why he capped him at 2,000 shares. He capped him at 2,000. The guy freaked out with 2,000. And then he immediately goes, why only 2,000? And what you learn if you watch the rest of the scene is that you're on the hook as the salesperson for that money. So you want to make sure the person's actually going to pay the bill. But that's another really subtle thing that he uses there is like there's like a hard cap, and the hard cap is a test. And then you pull that back. That's where that comes into play of it's really, really kind of, it's a critical sales skill. It's like setting the hook and then pulling the hook up. That's how you can use either loss aversion or the takeaway.
Behind all of this, though, Frankie, is fear. It's fear of silence. That's when you start discounting or lowering your price just because they're quiet. This is someone who sends a quote to a customer in an email and doesn't hear back for a day or two, and they send the next one saying they'd be willing to drop it. It's a lack of confidence. It's a fear of rejection. So you use weak qualifiers like if you're interested or if that works for you. It's a fear of pestering, like I'm bothering you somehow, like your time somehow is more valuable than mine as the salesperson. There's fear behind all of these reasons why people start negotiating with ghosts.
Yeah, keep rolling. I agree.
And there's more fear right now in a market where your commissions have not been as high. And you think about the opposite of what's happening right now. You think back 3-4 years ago when people had lines at the door and couldn't write enough deals, they were acting more in demand. They were acting more Vin Diesel. They weren't dropping price. Listen, I actually do have people waiting for me right now that I could be talking to and writing a deal with. Are you serious or not? And you're giving those signals. And if you give signals on the other side, which is, I haven't seen a customer in a few days, customers can sniff that out. You don't feel in demand, and it doesn't feel like they're making a good decision.
So there's something in sales. Most salespeople are commissioned, and most commission schedules run month to month. There's something called going from being a hero to being a zero. And what that is it's when the month changes. So you've crushed it this month, and then this month ends and next month starts. And no matter how well you did, you got to do it again. So sales can be a very repetitive business, and it can be a burnout type of a business because of that very thing. So no matter if it's a good market or a bad market, you go through that same sales cycle. And if you're in a longer sales cycle, it might be a quarterly sales cycle or an annual sales cycle. In almost every business, a sales cycle has a cycle. So the other part of it that I think is really critical, we were having a conversation this morning with the same sales rep who was talking about the market has shifted. And I asked, did you reverse prospect? We use different terms, but reverse prospecting is, okay, I have one under contract. Now I need to sell it. Did you reverse prospect? She said, no. I said, have you been reverse prospecting? And she said, no. I said, why not? She goes, well, everyone was just calling me on my blast, on my sales, so I didn't need to. I said, exactly. So if you get into this cycle where you go from the hero to zero, you lose your confidence, ask yourself, like, am I doing all the same stuff? Am I doing the full cycle? Am I just doing part of the cycle? And if you're a good manager, you're going to ask those questions. Like, it's not just part of a cycle. There has to be an entire sales cycle. And if you're skipping some of that, what then comes in is you create ghosts because you're just not doing all the work. And a good market can spoil you from the standpoint of, okay, the people are going to just show up in my model. It might be a little bit harder in a bad market because you really have to work a little bit harder to find a little bit more value. The other thing that kind of comes into this is like, what's your value prop? You really need to understand it. You need to be able to propose that to people in a way, and you got to really believe in it. And if you don't believe in it, you're not going to be able to sell it in a good market, but you're certainly not going to be able to sell it in a bad market.
Love all of that. I think just wrapping up on a few things, the silence has to belong to the prospect. You don't talk. Once you've priced, once you've given it to them, let them think. Don't break that silence. Don't go in for that piece. If price is a real objection, and it is for some people, price and payment, they have to be able to qualify. It depends on the market that you're in. And they ask for a lower price. Reduce the scope. You can always reduce the price. It sounds like lot 14A that backs up to the golf course isn't in your budget because of the lot premium. Can I show you some of our move-in ready houses? Can I show you there are ways, if price is the most important, we have some specs that are already available. They're in a different section. I can take you over to look at it. If you're just dropping your price right away, you're saying that you were overcharging them in the first place and you lose credibility. I can help you with price if this is a driver, a true driver, but we're not talking about the same house anymore. We're not talking about the same lot. We're not talking about the same location. There are things that I can do. So let's go. Do you want to talk about this? No. I really want this one. So do a lot of people. That's why there's a premium on it.
So I was going to get
the loss aversion again, right?
What I was going to get to with that is that's exactly capping the guy at 2,000 and freaking out, right? So, hey, I can take you from the most gorgeous lot in the neighborhood with the most amazing view. And when you're in your kitchen and you're hosting people on your back deck and you're drinking wine or smoking a cigar, you're going to be looking at the clubhouse. Or we can just put you on, I don't know, Doom Loop or whatever the fucking street name is. Like you could just be between, two regular models, like with no view or looking in somebody else's house. Like, but that's $150,000 cheaper. Should we have that conversation? No, don't cap me at 2,000 shares. I can't do that. Or you're going to hear
the price is everything.
That's
I can
exactly
save you
right.
$200,000. The lot backs up to the train tracks. Is price everything still? Like, what are we talking about? And I think just the last thing I would say is, when you go to the doctor and you've got something seriously wrong with you and they quote you a price and you tell a surgeon, I need a price discount. A surgeon doesn't look you in the eyes and say, what do you need? They reassert how much better your life's going to be when they heal you. My dog a couple of years ago found an Advil that we had left on a table and ate an Advil. Well, an Advil can kill a Yorkie. My dog's 6 pounds. Started barfing a lot, couldn't stop barfing, took it to the vet, dehydrated, needed to stay at the vet for a couple of days. They had to put it on an IV. There were some things they had to do. It was like $9,000. And I remember just like my initial reaction was like, what? For an IV and 2-night stay in a dog hotel? And they were like, well, you don't have to do it. And I was like, you fuckers, like, of course I have to do it. You're pretty much telling me this dog's dying if it doesn't stay here. They didn't negotiate with me. It was, well, how are you going to feel if you let your dog die? It was kind of the way they looked at me. Again, it came down to value. And it was also like late at night. So they were like, well, you could always shop around. And I'm like, yeah, I don't, you just told me I don't have time to shop around. So I think in all of those cases.
And the mob gets a bad name.
Exactly. The vet business is gross. It's gross. But in all of those cases, you have to confidently just look them in the eyes and reassert value. The value to me was my dog lives. The value of a surgeon is you'll walk again normal. Or, you'll have 10 more years of your life, whatever it is. They just reassert value. They don't get into price. The price is the price. They don't negotiate. That's how a surgeon does it. And if you are selling big ticket items, it's the same thing. A lot of work went into this lot, this house, this community, everything we are doing here. Years of work went into this and this price. This is our price, and this is the value we have to offer.
I think we're at a good spot to end it. I think the important thing here is to understand who your customer is and what service looks like to them, right? And like if Ian's getting hosed by somebody in my line of work, the people that we work with get hosed all the time. Like they don't get any level of customer service. So just like being honest, telling them what's going to happen, providing those services, like that is the service. And like, just think about that. Like so many people get railroaded by almost every industry nowadays, it feels like. So providing honesty and those things are great. Hey, if you want to use, if you're not as aggressive as Ian and me on the sales side, right? Hey, this one's $150,000 more because it has the beautiful lot at the golf course. But I've got 3 other options for you. I've got a $100,000 option. I've got a $50,000 option. I have a $0 option. You don't have to be as extreme, and you can pick and choose how you do those things on the sales side based upon your level of personality and how you want to present yourself to others. As long as it's effective, you can pick your own path.
Assume the fastball, Frankie.
I like that.
They're going to buy. Frankie, good hanging out with you. And for all of you, we're going to just go ahead and assume that you are following us. If you are not, click that follow button, turn on your notifications, mash that like button, give us a 5-star review and some choice comments. Frankie, great seeing you, homie.
Always a pleasure, brother.